You're in a meeting. Your boss says, "I need everyone to work harder." She sends a memo. She installs tracking software. She threatens bonuses. People comply, but they resent it. They do the minimum. And the moment she's not looking, they slack off. Sound familiar? Now imagine a different leader. She doesn't demand. She doesn't threaten. She shows up early, works with focus, treats people with respect. And somehow, without a word, the team follows. That's not magic. That's strategy. And a man who lived 2,500 years ago understood it better than most CEOs today. You see, the first leader used force, rules, surveillance, carrots and sticks. It works in the short term, but it breeds dependency and resentment. The second leader used something more powerful, presence. She became a gravitational center. People orbited her not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Think about your own experience. When have you felt most motivated? Was it when someone micromanaged you, or when you felt trusted and inspired? The answer is obvious. Yet most organizations still operate on the assumption that people are lazy and need to be controlled. Confucius would call that a failure of leadership. He'd say, if your people are not inspired, look in the mirror. This is Confucius, Sun Tzu, the philosopher who shaped East Asian civilization. He lived in a time of chaos, war, and corrupt rulers. His answer? Not more laws, not more punishment. Better people. He believed that the quality of a society depends on the character of its leaders. And that character starts with virtue. Today, we're diving into Book 2 of the Analects, Good Government. But don't let the name fool you. This isn't just about politics. It's about how to lead your life, your team, your family, without force. Confucius was not a king or a general. He was a teacher. He wandered from state to state, offering advice to rulers who often ignored him. Yet his ideas endured, while those rulers' names are forgotten. Why? Because he understood a universal truth: power based on position is fragile. Power based on character is unshakable. In the Analects, he doesn't give a checklist of policies. He gives a mirror. He asks, what kind of person are you? Are you trustworthy? Are you respectful? Do you learn from your mistakes? These questions are as relevant today as they were 2,500 years ago. Confucius said. Translation: He who governs by virtue is like the North Star, it remains in place, and all the stars revolve around it. That's the core. Leadership isn't about moving. It's about being still, and being worthy of being orbited. Let that image sink in. The North Star doesn't chase anyone. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't compromise its position. It simply is. And because it is reliable, constant, and true, everything else in the sky orients around it. That's the kind of leader Confucius envisions, someone so grounded in virtue that others naturally gravitate toward them. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, governed by laws, governed by force, or governed by popularity. He says governed by virtue. Virtue here is not just moral goodness. It's a kind of magnetic integrity. It's the quality that makes people trust you, respect you, and want to emulate you. Think about the most influential person in your life. Let's unpack this image, the North Star. It doesn't chase the other stars. It doesn't shout, "Look at me." It simply stays fixed. And because it's reliable, everything else moves around it. That's governance by virtue. Confucius contrasts this with governance by force. Lead them with policies, restrain them with punishments, and the people will avoid punishment but have no shame. Lead them with virtue, restrain them with ritual, and they will have shame and also correct themselves. Here's the strategic insight: punishment controls behavior, but it doesn't change hearts. Virtue inspires loyalty. When you lead with integrity, people follow because they want to, not because they have to. Think about your own life. When have you truly followed someone? Was it because they had power over you? Or because you respected them? The answer is almost always respect. Confucius knew this. He said, if you govern them with dignity, they will be respectful. If you are filial and kind, they will be loyal. If you promote the good and teach the incompetent, they will be eager. That's the formula: dignity, kindness, and teaching. Not threats, not micromanagement. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds nice, but it's naive. People need rules. Confucius isn't anti-rule. He's saying rules alone fail. If you only rely on rules, you get compliance, not commitment. And compliance breaks when no one is watching. Virtue, on the other hand, creates self-regulation. It's the difference between a team that works because they're afraid of being fired, and a team that works because they believe in the mission. Which team would you rather lead? There's a deeper layer here. Confucius isn't just talking about external behavior. He's talking about internal transformation. When you lead with virtue, you don't just change what people do, you change who they are. They internalize your values. They become self-governing. That's the ultimate goal of leadership, to make yourself unnecessary. Confucius applies this directly to family. When asked about filial piety, he gives different answers to different people. To one, he says, do not disobey. To another, the difficult part is the expression on your face. Why the variation? Because he's tailoring the teaching to the person. But the core is consistent: respect, not just provision. Nowadays, filial piety means being able to feed your parents. But even dogs and horses are fed. Without respect, what's the difference? That hits hard. How often do we take care of our loved ones, financially, materially, but neglect the emotional respect? You can buy your parents a house and still treat them like children. You can provide for your partner and still dismiss their feelings. Confucius says, respect is the key. And respect shows in your face, your tone, your attention. It's not about grand gestures. It's about being present. In relationships, the leader isn't the one with the most power. It's the one who sets the tone of respect. If you want loyalty, show dignity. If you want love, show kindness. It's simple, but not easy. Consider the concept of color in Confucius's teaching. He says the difficult part is the expression on your face. That means you can say all the right words, but if your face shows frustration or impatience, the respect is hollow. Your true attitude leaks through your nonverbal cues. So the first step in applying this wisdom is to cultivate genuine inner respect. Not fake it. Actually cultivate it. Because people can smell insincerity. When you truly respect someone, it shows. And when you don't, it shows even more. Confucius also taught that relationships are reciprocal. Do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself. That's the golden rule, but it's also a leadership principle. If you want respect, give respect. If you want loyalty, be loyal. If you want love, be loving. The leader sets the pattern. The follower mirrors it. At work, Confucius's advice is brutally practical. A superior person is not a vessel. Meaning, don't be a specialist limited to one function. Be adaptable, multi-skilled, a generalist who can lead. He also says, first practice what you preach, then follow through. That's integrity. In a world of empty promises, the person who does what they say is rare and respected. And then this, the superior person is inclusive, not divisive. The petty person is divisive, not inclusive. In team dynamics, do you build bridges or walls? Do you seek common ground or highlight differences? Confucius says true leaders unite. They don't create factions. They also warn, to attack a problem from the wrong angle is harmful. In other words, don't get stuck in one perspective. Be open. Learn. Adapt. And finally, when you see a worthy person, think of becoming like them. When you see an unworthy person, examine yourself. That's continuous improvement. Instead of criticizing others, use their flaws as a mirror for your own growth. This is how you build a culture of excellence. Not by pointing fingers, but by looking inward. Let's dive deeper into each of these points. First, not a vessel. In ancient China, vessels were specialized containers for specific purposes. Confucius is saying that a leader shouldn't be limited to one skill or role. You need to be versatile. In today's world, that means developing a broad skill set, understanding different functions, and being able to step into different roles. It's the opposite of the siloed employee who only knows their own job. A leader understands the whole system. Second, practice what you preach. This is about credibility. If you say one thing and do another, your words become meaningless. People watch what you do, not what you say. So if you want your team to be punctual, be punctual. If you want them to work hard, work hard. Your example is your most powerful tool. Third, inclusive, not divisive. This is about building unity. In any organization, there are natural tensions, between departments, between personalities. A leader finds common ground and focuses on shared goals. They don't take sides or create cliques. They bring people together. Fourth, attack the problem from the right angle. This means don't be dogmatic. Be willing to change your approach if it's not working. Confucius was not rigid, he adapted his teaching to each student. Confucius famously summarized his own life. At 15, I set my heart on learning. At 30, I stood firm. At 40, I had no doubts. At 50, I knew heaven's will. At 60, my ear was obedient. At 70, I could follow my heart's desire without overstepping the line. This is a roadmap of personal growth. It's not about achieving everything at once. It's about gradual mastery. First, commit to learning. Then, build a foundation. Then, gain clarity. Then, understand your purpose. Then, develop the ability to hear criticism without defensiveness. Finally, reach a state where your instincts align with what's right. That's freedom within discipline. The key is self-cultivation. Learning without thought is useless. Thought without learning is dangerous. You need both. Action and reflection. Experience and study. And to know what you know and what you don't know, that is wisdom. Humility is the beginning of knowledge. So ask yourself, where are you on this path? Are you still learning? Are you standing firm? Or are you stuck? The only way forward is to keep growing. Let's break down each stage. At 15, Confucius set his heart on learning. That means he made a conscious decision to prioritize growth. In our lives, we often stop learning after formal education. But true leaders are lifelong learners. They read, they ask questions, they seek feedback. At 30, he stood firm. This means he had developed principles and a stable character. He wasn't easily swayed by every new trend or opinion. He had a foundation. At 40, he had no doubts. This doesn't mean he knew everything. It means he had clarity about his values and direction. He was no longer confused about what mattered. At 50, he knew heaven's will. This is about understanding your purpose and the bigger picture. It's a sense of calling. At 60, his ear was obedient. This means he could listen without defensiveness. He could receive criticism and learn from it. That's a rare skill. At 70, he could follow his heart without overstepping. This is the ultimate integration. Your desires align with what is good. You don't have to fight yourself anymore. Some critics say Confucius is too idealistic. Virtue doesn't work in the real world. You need power, rules, and consequences. They point to dictators who ruled by fear and got results. But history shows that fear-based systems collapse. They lack resilience. Others argue that Confucius's emphasis on hierarchy and obedience is outdated, even oppressive. They say it suppresses individuality and reinforces inequality. There's truth in that. Confucius lived in a feudal society. His teachings were later used to justify rigid social orders. But the core insight, that character matters more than force, transcends time. The challenge is to apply the spirit, not the letter. Lead with virtue, but also with strength. Be inclusive, but don't tolerate harm. Respect tradition, but question it. The goal isn't blind obedience. It's voluntary alignment. That's the art of governance, whether in a nation, a company, or a family. Let's address the criticisms head-on. First, the real-world argument. Yes, there are times when force is necessary, to stop a crime, to enforce a contract, to protect the innocent. But Confucius is not saying never use force. He's saying don't rely on it as your primary tool. If you lead only by force, you create a brittle system that breaks when the force is removed. In contrast, leading by virtue creates a resilient system that can withstand challenges. History shows this. The most enduring organizations, from the Roman Republic to modern democracies, are built on shared values, not just coercion. Second, the hierarchy and obedience are criticism. Confucius did emphasize respect for authority, but he also said that authority must be earned through virtue. A ruler who is corrupt loses the mandate of heaven. So it's not blind obedience, it's conditional loyalty. And in modern contexts, we can adapt this to mean that leaders must earn trust. Hierarchy is not inherently bad, it can provide structure and efficiency. The problem is when hierarchy is used to suppress dissent or exploit others. Confucius would condemn that. Finally, the individuality concern. Confucius valued harmony, but not at the expense of truth. He said, the superior person is not a yes man. So individuality is respected, as long as it doesn't disrupt the collective good. The key is balance, know when to stand out and when to blend in. In a world of extreme individualism, Confucius's emphasis on community and responsibility is a necessary counterbalance. Your power is not in your position. It's in your character. Confucius's wisdom is a mirror. It asks, you the kind of person others want to follow? Not because you demand it, but because you deserve it. Start with yourself. Cultivate virtue. And watch the stars align. The journey is long, but every step matters. Begin today. Read the Analects. Reflect on your actions. Practice respect in your relationships. Be adaptable at work. Learn constantly. And remember, the North Star doesn't move. It just shines. You can be that star in your own world. Not by forcing others to orbit you, but by being so steady, so true, that they naturally gravitate toward your light.